So now we have David Kleiser, PhD student here at SDSU, and so he's going to kick us off.
Thank you, Dr. Samuel, for that introduction. And so we conducted a study here in collaboration with Christensen Farms at the South Dakota State University Commercial Wean to Finish Research Facility, where we evaluated the performance response of the grow-finished pig fed increasing dietary levels of the amino acid tryptophan in diets containing 40% dried distillers grains with solubles. So previous research has shown that high inclusion levels of DDGs can negatively impact pig performance. This can be potentially explained through the amino acid composition of the diet. And so when we start to look at the amino acid composition of corn and DDGs, we can see that these feed ingredients supply relatively low levels of the amino acid tryptophan, relative to that of other amino acids. And so we know the amino acid tryptophan is important in the feed intake response associated with these pigs. So we were hoping to possibly impact performance through different inclusion levels of the amino acid tryptophan. So we designed a study using 1,170 pigs, where we looked at these pigs between the body weights of 85 and 310 pounds. We included DDGs in the diets at 40%, and we held that constant throughout the whole trial. We utilized synthetic L-tryptophan to meet these titration levels. We supplied tryptophan relative to lysine at 15, 18, 21, and 24%. Current recommendations by the Swine NRC would set the requirement for tryptophan to lysine at 18%. This 3% difference in our tryptophan to lysine ratio treatments equates to about a 0.5 to 0.6 pounds per ton inclusion of synthetic tryptophan. With synthetic tryptophan costing around $4 per pound, this equates to about a $2 per ton increase in diet costs between our dietary treatments. And so moving into our performance results, first I want to take a second and set up our charts here. So in the blue chart here, or in the blue bar here, we have our growing period with pigs between the body weights of 85 and 185 pounds. And in the yellow bars here, we have our finishing phase with pigs between the body weights of 185 and 310 pounds. And so we can see here, looking at the average daily feed intake response, that increasing the tryptophan to lysine ratio in diets containing 40% DDGs resulted in a linear increase in feed intake in both the growing and finishing periods. However, when we look at the finishing period, we can see that we had a slightly weaker response to increasing tryptophan compared to that of the growing period. And so as we move into the average daily gain response, we can see here during the growing period that increasing the tryptophan to lysine ratio in diets containing 40% DDGs resulted in a linear increase in average daily gain. However, when we look at our corn soybean meal diet on the far right, we can see that the pigs receiving the corn soybean meal diet had a higher average daily gain compared to that of pigs feeding or receiving DDGs. When we look at our finishing period, we can see here that we only had a tendency for a linear improvement in average daily gain with increasing tryptophan levels in our DDG diets. So as we start to summarize the data from this study, we can see that increasing the tryptophan to lysine ratio in diets containing 40% DDGs resulted in an increase in feed intake, which ultimately resulted in an increase in average daily gain, and with no change in feed efficiency. And all of this ultimately led to a linear increase in final body weight. When we look at the corn soybean meal diets in comparison to the DDG diets, we can see that pigs fed the corn soybean meal diets had improved average daily gain, improved feed efficiency, and the heaviest final body weight compared to that of the pigs receiving DDG diets. So when we start to provide some of the preliminary recommendations from the study, we would recommend that you'd use a minimum tryptophan to lysine ratio of 18%. And if you're looking to implement a strategy such as this in your production system, you look at implementing a strategy during the growing period. And this is because we saw the greatest response in tryptophan during our growing period. Some of the further analysis of our study would suggest that once pigs reach 250 pounds, that increasing the tryptophan to lysine ratio in these diets had no impact on performance. And this might be associated with feeder pressure during that late finishing period. And with that, I'll take any questions if we have time. If not, please feel free to reach out to me or Dr. Samuel. And thank you.
All right, seeing no questions at the moment, I'll have Talia come up next.
All right, good morning, everyone. I'm Talia Everding. I'm a master's student here with Dr. Levesque, and my project was looking at hair cortisol as a chronic stress biomarker in group-housed and stall-housed pregnant sows. So the purpose of this study was to determine hair cortisol concentrations in sows in 2 different housing systems. So one of the things we use to measure stress generally is cortisol, which is a hormone that responds to stress. Normally we measure that in the blood, but the blood only gives us one short time point. It's sort of like asking someone, how's your day going at like the worst point of their day? They're going to say it's a terrible day, even though overall maybe the day wasn't so bad, just that one moment is really bad. So what we wanted to do was look at cortisol as it's deposited in the hair as the hair grows. So the hair basically turns out to be like a map measuring each accumulation of cortisol on every day. So what we did is we had 32 sows housed in pens, in 3 different pens throughout gestation, and 34 sows in stalls. Just in typical gestation stalls. We called day 0 the day that we bred them, and we took hair samples and shaved from the hip there. I'm not sure you can see on the screen, but took hair samples there from the hip on day 37, day 74, and day 111. And the purpose of that was just to take samples at basically every trimester and split gestation into 3 equal parts. And then what we did was we analyzed the samples from day 37 and day 111. So our results basically came back, and overall, sows in stalls had a higher concentration of cortisol in their hair, which may mean that they had a higher level of stress throughout gestation. Those pictures there, you can just see our gestation facility split up into stalls there on the left and the pens on the right. And then when we look at the results on a little more detailed level, I split them into 3 different parity groups. So there on the left, you can see in the red box that the gilts and parity 1 sows housed in stalls had a much higher level of stress than all of the other groups overall. The gilts and parity 1 sows in pens had quite a bit lower cortisol level, and across the board, the sows in stalls had higher stress. And then there up on the right, you can see that the day 37 sample had a slightly lower cortisol level than the day 111 samples. And that's pretty much what we expect, that throughout gestation, we know that cortisol increases as they get closer to farrowing. So that's pretty much an expected result. So overall, we noticed that stress increases with pregnancy, but that the young sows experience more stress in stalls. And that's all I have.
All right, thank you.
Okay, good morning. My name is Ricardo, and today I'm going to talk about the high-protein yeast product as an alternative to commonly used protein sources. So, in the ethanol industry, there are some co-products that have been used in the swine diets, like DDGS, and in this figure is to show the process to obtain the DDGS, where the corn goes through mechanical and fermentative process to be distilled and obtain ethanol. In order to improve the yield ethanol production, the industry has been adding yeast, which also improves the quality of the DDGS. So continue with the process, the residues from the distillation process, they are centrifuged to obtain corn oil, and the remaining residues will be drier. But depending on the dryer process, the characteristics and qualities of the DDGS will be affected. So in this project, the methods of dryer that we use was ring dryer and spray dryer. The ring dryer is a method where the residues are injected in a hot stream air, and a spray dryer is a method where the wet residues are atomized and drier with using hot gas. So now we are going to see the effects of the addition in the swine diets using these two different products. The objective of this trial was determine the standard ileal digestibility of amino acids using two yeast-based high protein in 7 pigs with body weight around 25 kilograms. So they were cannulated with T cannula, and the experimental diets were compared with conventional DDGs and some commercial high protein diets like soybean meal, HP-300, and fish meal. So moving on the results, the crude protein content of the Sprite diets and ring diets were better than conventional DDGs and similar than soybean meal and HP-300, but they were lower than fish meal. In the standard ileal digestibility, the HP-300 diet was better than the other diets because the enzymatic process of this ingredient notably improved the digestibility. So, but looking at the other diets, Sprite diet and ring diet were similar than soybean meal and conventional DDGs and fish meal. The standard ideal digestibility of lysine, the most limited amino acid in the Sprite diet, was better than conventional DDGs and similar to fish meal and soybean meal. The SID of methionine, the Sprite diet and ring diet, was similar to DDGs and soybean meal and was better than fish meal. And finally, the SID of threonine was similar in the Sprite diet and ring diet. They were similar to soybean meal and fish meal and better than conventional DDGs. So the implication of this product, this trial, is that the use of high protein yeast products are potential alternative ingredients in swine diets, but to have more precise information on inclusion in swine diets, we are working the next step to evaluate the energy digestibility to have better knowledge using these co-products. Thank you so much for your attention.
Hello everyone, I'm Jin-Soo Hong. Today's my research presentation is gross performance and blood immune parameters of nursery pigs fed canola meal-based diet. Canola meal is secondly widely used protein source in swine diets. Canola meal has well-balanced amino acid compared to soybean meal, but it has some anti-nutritional factors. It has high fiber contents and high glucosinolates contents. So the inclusion level of canola meal has been limited in the nursery pigs diets. The glucosinolates inhibits the thyroid function and enlarge the metabolic organs such as liver or heart in pigs. But the glucosinolates has also antibacterial or antimicrobial effects. The most of fiber in canola meal is insoluble fiber. The insoluble fiber in canola meal can increase the digesta passage rate, thereby reducing the available time for enterotoxigenic E. coli to proliferate and attach to gut mucosa. Considering those effects of canola meal, we conducted the experiment to determine the effects of including solvent-extracted canola meal in nursery diets. So we used 200 weaning pigs, and their initial body weight was 7 kilograms. And they were fed 5 different diets, and the diets were corn soybean meal based diets containing 0, 10, 20, 30, or 40% of solvent extracted canola meal. The diets were formulated to similar net energy value and similar standardized ileal digestibility of limiting amino acids such as lysine and methionine. Our nutrients met or exceed of nutritional requirement, energy requirements of nursery pigs, and the experimental diets were fed in 3 phases. As you can see in the left figures, dietary cannula meal levels, the increasing the dietary cannula meal levels show the quadratic increase in overall ADG and overall ADFI, such that when increasing the dietary level of cannula meal from 0 to 20%, increase the overall ADG and ADFI. However, when the increasing level of dietary cannula meal from 20% to 40%, decrease the overall ADG and ADFI. Moving on to the serum T3 and T4, due to the negative effect of glucosinolates present in cannula meal, the serum T4 concentration was decreased linearly by the increasing the dietary cannula meal from 0 to 40%. In the immunoglobulins, dietary cannula meal levels did not affect the serum immunoglobulin G and M and tumor necrosis factor alpha concentration. But in the serum immunoglobulin A concentration, there is a quadratic response such that the serum immunoglobulin A concentration for cannula meal 20% treatment showed the lowest level among the treatment. So in conclusion, the solvent extracted cannula meal can be included in the nursery diet at 20% to improve the growth performance without any negative effects on blood immune parameters. So as you previously mentioned, increasing the dietary level of cannula meal from 20% to 40% have no difference in the growth performance compared to that of cannula meal 0%. This is because the positive effect of cannula meal partly countered by negative effect of glucosinolates in the cannula meal. Thank you very much. I'm gonna give another presentation instead of Kevin Perez Bogota. So the topic of this presentation is the effect of heat pretreatment or enzyme predigestion on corn or stillage on digestibility of in vitro and in vivo study. The corn distillers grains with soluble we can call corn DDGS. Corn DDGS is the most important co-product of biofuel industry in the US. The corn DDGS used as a protein or energy source in swine diets, but it has high contents of non-starch polysaccharide which negatively affect the digestibility of nutrient or energy in pigs. Therefore, there is a critical need to improving the availability of corn DDGS by developing the new technology. The heat pretreatment or enzyme predigestion can be a good method to increasing the nutrient digestibility of corn whole stillage or corn DDGS. So the objective of the following studies was to evaluate the effect of heat pretreat or enzyme predigest corn whole stillage on nutrient digestibility of pigs by in vitro model and in vivo model. So in the first study, we prepared the whole stillage with or without heat pretreatment at 160 Celsius degree 20 minutes. And also we prepared the 3 different multi-enzyme which contains the different activities of fiber degrading enzyme. So we give full replication to each treatment, and the subsamples were subjected to in vitro digestion and in vitro fermentation. As you can see, the first figures, the in vitro digestibility of dry matter for whole stillage without heat pretreatment or enzyme predigestion with the yellow bar. It shows the lowest value of in vitro digestibility at 73%. Heat pretreatment improved the in vitro digestibility of dry matter for whole stillage. And also, enzyme predigestion improved the in vitro digestibility of dry matter for whole stillage. In the total gas production by in vitro fermentation, the similar interactions were observed with the enzyme predigestion effect and heat pretreatment effect. So in conclusion, in this study, the combination of heat pretreatment and enzyme predigestion could have a synergic effect on the ileal in vitro digestibility and in vitro fermentation for whole stillage. In the second study, we conducted the in vitro experiment to evaluate the optimal time and best enzyme complex for predigesting the whole stillage. So we prepared the 3 different enzyme complex, which has different fiber degrading enzyme activities, and we measured the different incubation time from 6 hours to 24 hours. And those samples were subjected to in vitro digestion. So as you can see, the yellow graph, it is the control treatment without any heat pretreatment or enzyme digestion. There is no changes among the 6 to 24 hours. And the third enzyme complex showed the greatest value of in vitro digestibility of dry matter for whole stillage. And also, with regard to the improvement of in vitro digestibility of dry matter for whole stillage, the optimal time for predigestion of multi-enzyme was approximately 14 hours. In the third study, this experiment was conducted to evaluate the apparent ileal digestibility of amino acid and energy values for heat-treated or multi-enzyme predigested whole stillage. We used 10 ileal cannulated barrels, and they were fed five different diets in a replicated 5x5 Latin scale design. The experimental diets were cornstarch-based diets with 35% of conventional DDGS and whole stillage with heat pretreatment and whole stillage with predigestion of multi-enzyme and nitrogen-free diets. As you can see, those graphs, the dark blue bar is corn DDGS, yellow bar is corn whole stillage, green bar is the heat pretreated whole stillage, and light blue bar is the predigested whole stillage. When you see the green bars, the standardized ileal digestibility of amino acid for the heat treated whole stillage was lower than those for other treatments. This might be explained by the Maillard reactions with overheating. And as you can see, the light blue bars for predigested whole stillage, the standardized ileal digestibility of lysine was greater in the predigested whole stillage among the dietary treatment. And in the energy digestibility and energy values for whole stillage, when you see the blue box first, the heat pretreated whole stillage show the lower energy digestibility and energy values than the corn whole stillage, but when you see the red box, the predigested whole stillage show the greater energy digestibility and energy values than the corn DDGS. So in overall conclusion, the heat pretreatment and predigestion with enzyme improved the in vitro digestibility and in vitro fermentation for whole stillage. And the optimal period of enzyme predigestion was approximately 14 minutes. Finally, heat pretreatment with the whole stillage decreased the standardized ileal digestibility of amino acid and net energy due to the Maillard reaction with overheating, but the multi-enzyme predigestion can increase the standardized ileal digestibility of lysine and net energy values for whole stillage. Thank you very much.
Hi, so I'm Hannah. I'm a first-year master's student under Dr. Levesque, and today I'm going to be talking about the impact of water flow rate on finishing pig performance, specifically during the summer months. So the National Swine Nutrition Guide recommends that our water flow rate for our grow-finished pigs is around 4 cups per minute. In 2019, a survey was conducted over South Dakota pork producers, and we found that 86% of producers had water flow rate above this 4 cups per minute recommendation. The results from this trial found that excess water flow rate does not lead to improved gain or feed efficiency. So what we did in this trial is from the months of June to October, we had 2 different rooms, totaling to about 396 pigs. We had 22 pens of pigs per treatment. So we went through and we adjusted all of our water nipples within our water cups. So you can see we took off that yellow cap on the water nipple, and then from there adjusted the water setting or the orifice size. So we've high, medium, and low. High hitting just under 8 cups per minute. Medium getting pretty close to that nutrition guide recommendation of just under 4 cups. And then our low, we are just above 2 cups per minute. Pigs were weighed every 28 or 26 days or with their diet phase change, and then water flow rates were collected every 2 weeks. So looking at this graphic here, we have average gallons of water consumed per pig per day. That top red line there is the barn room, like high temperature, and then this light blue we have our high water flow rate, yellow our medium flow rate, average water used per pig, and then that dark blue at the bottom there is our low water flow rate of water usage gallons per pig. Main point that I want to get across here is that we see a pretty dramatic difference or increase in our water usage within our high water flow rate. Now, as we move forward, keep this graphic in mind of our differences in average water usage, and we see that yes, our high water treatment did end up having an increase in average daily feed intake, but this increase in average daily feed intake did not translate into additional gain. So there's no statistical difference in final body weight or average daily feed intake, and we also don't see a difference in our feed to gain ratio. There's just not a strong enough difference in our feed to gain or average daily gain to like pull anything on our feed efficiency. So main point that we're going to get across here is just be aware of the water flow rate and the water pressure that's in your barn. Make sure you're following, especially for that grow finish phase, those 4 cups per minute. There's no additional benefit of having excess water flow rate, and more than likely it's just adding to your pit volume. If you want to go through, check your water flow rate, pretty easy. You need just an old cake pan, a timer, and a measuring cup. Go through, let your waterer overflow, stick that cake pan underneath there, collect water for a minute, and then dump that water that you've collected into your measuring cup. And then from there, you can make decisions as to whether or not you need to adjust your water flow rate within your barn. Thank you.
All right, good morning, everyone. My name is Jorge. I am postdoctoral research here at Animal Science Department. And this study is about protease supplementation during the nursery phase. So we know that protease increase protein digestion, right? But why is this relevant to nursery pigs? we know that those guys, they have poor capacity to digest nutrients, right? And also we use high quality protein sources. So we have a lot of protein going to the tract, digestive tract, and this guy have poor capacity to digest that protein. So we have a lot of the undigestible protein going to the large intestinal, and then we allow the growth of pathogenic bacteria, and then fermentation and diarrhea and poor performance of these guys during the first weeks after weaning. So the question with this study was, does protease in low amino acid diets with superdosing level of phytase reduce diarrhea and improve nursery pigs performance? That was the question. And for that, we use two diets, right? Evaluating the dietary amino acid supplies. So a standard nursery program for pigs and a low amino acid diet with 50% lower in amino acids. And both of these diets has phytase and at the inclusion the 2,500 units. And we have two different levels of protease. So basically with and without protease supplementation. This study was performed at our commercial win to finish bar, and we use 936 pigs and 36 pens, and we have 26 pigs per pen. So overall duration of this experiment was 43 days, and we evaluate performance every 15 days. So in our results, we don't find any association or any relationship between dietary amino acid supplies and protease levels. But when we see the dietary amino acid supply effects, we can see like those animals, those pigs fed standard diet, they have greater performance in comparison with low amino acid diets pigs. But when we see the protease effect, we didn't see any effects on growth performance during the nursery period. Now, when we go into the analysis of incidence of diarrhea, we use, and you're right, we use these 4 scores of diarrhea. They's gone to 1, where we have solid feces, until 4, that we have a clear diarrhea. But for this analysis, we consider 1 and 2 has a normal feces, and 3 and 4 has diarrhea. So in the graph, you can see that we evaluate in day 7, day 10, and day 14 after weaning, and we have in blue, in orange, the standard in low amino acid diets, and we have in gray and yellow the with and with protease supplementation. So we can see that in day 7, we have both effect of dietary amino acid supplies and protease supplementations. Basically, pigs fed standard diets and diets with the supplementation, protease supplementation, they have more normal feces, right, and less incidence of diarrhea for day 7. And day 10 and day 14, we just only observe the effects of protease when pigs fed protease supplemented diets. They had more normal feces in comparison with the other guys, with the control guys, and also they have less incidence of diarrhea. So the implication of this study is that the use of enzyme in swan diet, they are not only linking with benefits on nutrient digestible or nutrient digestibility, but also these enzymes can improve, for example, good health or intestinal health that is important in this specific period for these nursery pigs. So thank you.
Good morning. My name is Christian Ramirez. I'm a PhD student under Dr. Crystal Beck. Today I'm going to talk about efficiency of amino acid utilization during gestation, specifically for gilts during early, mid, and late gestation. So first, efficiency of amino acid utilization can be defined as the proportion of SID amino acid that is retained by the body. In other words, from the amino acids that are absorbed by the small intestine, a proportion will be used by the body in different metabolic processes and then excreted in the urine. Another proportion of this absorbed amino acid will be retained by the body in the different tissues that make up the pregnant gilt. So, in other words, the efficiency of amino acid utilization is the proportion of the absorbed amino acid that stays in the body and is not excreted. And to know the efficiency of amino acid utilization is important because it is used for the estimation of the amino acid requirements. If we know, for example, that a pregnant gilt needs 6 grams of SID lysine at some specific day of gestation, and we know that the efficiency of SID lysine utilization is 50%, we can estimate the requirement as 12 grams of lysine per day, sorry. So 6 grams will go to different tissues that make up the pregnant gilt, and 6 will be used by the body in different metabolic functions, and then it will be excreted mainly as urine. So for our study, our hypothesis was that the efficiency of SID lysine utilization changes across gestation. So basically it's different between early, mid, and late gestation. To test our hypothesis, we provided 4 groups of gilts with 8 different SID lysine intake levels, providing different SID lysine intake levels ranging from 36 to 90% of the daily requirement, and then we measure nitrogen retention. We use nitrogen balance for that purpose, and then in the nitrogen balance we measure the difference between the nitrogen intake and the nitrogen excretion. So then we study how nitrogen retention was influenced by the different levels of SID intake. As we can see in the graph, we measure how much nitrogen was in the feed minus how much was in the feces and urine, and the difference was the nitrogen retention. So based on the nitrogen retention, we calculated the lysine retention, and then we estimated what proportion of that lysine intake was retained, or in other words, the efficiency of lysine utilization. In this graph, in this slide, in the top left graph, we can see how the efficiency of SID lysine utilization changes at different levels of intake. As we can see in the table in the top right of the screen, the maximum efficiency was different across gestation. At this point, we're interested on maximum efficiency, since that's the goal of the production, to maximize efficiency. And we can see that it was 0.67 during early gestation. The maximum efficiency of amino acid of lysine utilization was 0.67 during early gestation, 0.54 during mid gestation, and 0.53 during late gestation. So we concluded that the efficiency is not constant across gestation. But in addition to that, as we can see in the top left graph, the efficiency is also influenced by the level of intake. So in other words, if we provide out of optimal SID lysine levels to pregnant sows, the nitrogen retention decreases and the efficiency decreases. Thus, providing a single diet might not be the most efficient strategy for pregnant sows, as we have to consider the potential cost of not providing optimal SID lysine intake. It's important to consider, for example, how excess lysine increases the metabolic cost to the animals, how that affects the energy, that might cause an increase in energy that the animal has to use for get rid of the excess nitrogen. So also providing out of optimal SID lysine levels might also cost increase environmental cost, in the sense like there will be an excess nutrient excretion that we have to handle properly, we have to dispose or use, and that could include also the economic cost of the production, the excess of the lysine that we are giving to the animals, and how to dispose the manure, how to use the manure, and how that will affect the energy of the animal, and in general all the cost of the production. And that's it.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Annalisa Swanson. I'm a master's student under Dr. Levesque, and today I'm going to talk to you about my trial and what I did. So the objective of my study, or what I did with my study, is I fed a feed additive called medium-chain fatty acids to sows as well as their piglets, and followed their piglets all the way out through market. So up in the top portion, you have two different colored piglets. So the first one in the top left is a green piglet. The first half of that piglet, the sows were fed a controlled diet, so they did not get the feed additive. And the back half, the back end of that piglet is also green, so that piglet was also fed the controlled diet throughout the nursery period. So I fed this product throughout day 28 of gestation up until 6 weeks post-wean, and then tracked those piglets to market. So then moving into the second pig, we see here that first half of that piglet is green, meaning mom got fed the control. However, her piglet then got fed medium chain fatty acids once they entered into that nursery phase. The blue piglet, mom was fed medium chain fatty acids as well as the piglet. And then that fourth piglet on the right there indicates mom was fed MCFAs, and then her piglets were then fed just a standard control diet through those first three phases. So down below is my data collection and what I did. So starting at day 28 of gestation, that's when those sows were allotted to dietary treatment. So I took fecal samples on sows, took a body weight of sows, took a blood sample, as well as a nasal sample. And then once those sows entered the farrowing room, we were then weighing them, took fecal, blood, as well as nasal. Throughout the lactation period, I like to point out that we did 24-hour farrowings to estimate colostrum intake. So we also took, in lactation, we took body weights of piglets at day 7 of lactation, and then at weaning. And then at weaning, we also took tissue samples of piglets. So moving into weaning, sows had a fecal sample, body weight, as well as blood, and then piglets had weights, and then some piglets had tissue samples taken. Transitioning into the nursery period, like I mentioned, we fed 6 weeks post-wean. So week 2 of the nursery phase, we took a fecal sample and body weight of those piglets. And then week 4 of post-wean, we took body weights, and then the last 6 weeks, or the last marker 6 weeks of that nursery phase, we took fecal samples as well as body weights. My piglets are still being, they're just now hitting the market phase right now, so I just weighed my first group for market, and I still have another room to weigh, but we're still tracking body weight as well. Transitioning into results, I'd like to point out that our sows were hit with the flu their last half of gestation. So we did see a little bit slower growth to start, indicated there. We started at wean with a 12.3 and roughly 12.5 body weight for those piglets at weaning. But I would like to point out, although we did not pick it up statistically, numerically you see an increase in body weight that 6 weeks post-wean in that nursery phase. We see that medium chain fatty acid piglets, that mom was fed MCFAs, and then those piglets were fed MCFAs. We did see an increase in body weight there. Gain, no statistical differences there. However, moving into intake, we picked up a statistical difference where those pigs that were fed medium chain fatty acids ate more that week 2 post-wean. So some questions to be answered. Do medium chain fatty acids, do those pigs that we noticed in that first or that last 6 weeks, do they show an advantage throughout the grow finish period? And also, does including medium chain fatty acids in the sow diet get those piglets to market sooner? So who is in your first cuts? Are they hitting your market ideal weight sooner than your control piglets? Thank you.
All right. Thank you everyone for presenting. Are there any, I don't see any questions in the chat, but is there anyone, we have a few minutes, anyone wanted to ask a question to the group? All right, so welcome again to SDSU Swine Day 2020. And again, as I said earlier, in the 2020 version of the year that it's been, we've connected virtually, and I appreciate everyone logging on and being able to join us today. So the program for the day, again, we started with the Swine graduate program, research program this morning, and they've provided highlights of the research that they're working on and continue to work with. At 10:15, we will have our keynote speaker, and then at 11:30, Dr. Keith Underwood will talk about the South Dakota Meat Lab. At 1 p.m., we'll continue with some faculty research highlights. And then at 1:30, we'll get some updates from the ADRDL and the Vet Science Department. Continue again with faculty and graduate program highlights in part 3, and then closing of the day. I wanted to mention that the Swine Advisory Council will meet at 3 p.m., and those are the founding members and donors which provided the major funding for the new swine units to be built. The sponsors for SDSU Swine Day today, South Dakota Pork Producers Council is a sponsor, Marsh and McLennan Agency, a sponsor, Adiseo sponsored, and XFE Products are sponsors. So we appreciate their contribution and their support to our research programs, and look forward to meeting next year in 2021. Ideally that we'll be able to meet again in person.